Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You listen to Workers Radio. It's 20 past 7.
Yes. 20 past 7. We've got Crispy T in the studio. Good morning, Crispy T. How are you, son?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm very well. Welcome. Thank you.
Good.
No, welcome.
It's good to see you.
We've got James Farganne on the phone, on the blower, and ready to rock.
Ready to rock.
On the
Now,
blower.
James Farganne is a contributor to Henry Macko and does articles for him and has put up some articles that I've been interested in. The argument that Fukushima was sabotaged, and has put it out there about Jim Stone. James is all the way from Korea. James, good morning. Thanks for getting up and coming on Workers Radio Sydney, mate.
Good morning. Really pleased to be here.
Good morning. Now, James, these articles are very interesting, and it has caused a stir in the sort of truth movement, in a sort of a sense with a lot of people are refusing to put these articles about this thing, about what's happened in Fukushima. What inspired you to put this up and to put it out there for Jim Stone?
Well, I've been studying the truth movement for some time, and I've always been very skeptical, always aware that a lot of the so-called truth sites are a mixed bag. So I developed a really good BS detector, and when I encountered Jim Stone's website, everything about it rang true with me. And when I saw his Fukushima report, that it takes study. You have to sit down and roll up your sleeves and really dig into it. And you got to check out the links, and you got to check out the footnotes and do all your homework. And I did that, and I concluded that this was a rare bit of real unadulterated truth. And when I looked around at the alternative media, I had to wonder why it wasn't more widely reported. Natural News reported it. Degare, What Really Happened. These websites reported. Rents.com absolutely blacked it out. And David Icke appropriated it. David Icke reported the information in his Sunday newsletter as if it was his own, and he dropped Stone's name in passing. And so I really had to wonder what was going on. I tried to contact Stone repeatedly. He says repeatedly, if you don't get an answer from me, it's because I didn't get your email.
Okay.
So he didn't get my email, but finally I got through to him, and finally I got Henry Macko to agree to let me publish an overview of his work, and so that's how it happened.
So let's talk about Jim Stone and what he's put out there that's caused, I could say, the rift and the controversy, and what's happened at Fukushima. Now, he's a former NSA analyst. Is that correct?
That's what he says.
Yeah.
And that causes people some concern in itself, but I don't think it should.
Well, can you break down the basic points that Jim Stone puts forth as the what really did happen? What does Jim Stone say happened?
Okay, well, start off with your own common sense, and look at the videos of the tsunami hitting the mainland, and you'll see, the helicopters were there to capture it. And look at the tsunami crashing in on completely undamaged infrastructure. There's no destroyed roads. There's no collapsed buildings.
Now, the magnitude of that earthquake was 9.1, as we've been told.
Well, that's what was reported by USGS, but Jim Stone dug into the seismic records of Japan and confirmed that there was no 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Now, I will add to this that I've done some subsequent research, and I've learned that it's kind of complicated, but with nuclear-induced seismic events, you can have a 9.0 reading at the core of the event, okay? But because of the types of waves that are produced, you don't get that magnitude of surface damage from a nuclear-induced event. So that's consistent with what he's hypothesized. He doesn't have smoking gun proof of a seabed nuke, but that's the best explanation for what happened because, it's just the surface damage is not consistent with a natural 9.0 earthquake. Just look at it with your own eyeballs.
And he's saying that the mini nukes were put in the seabed.
Well, that's his best hypothesis. And then you got Ben Fulford, with his information about the Chikumaru and the Kursk nuke that was smuggled in via the North Korean people.
They found a Russian sub, yeah.
Right, but the main thing is just look at the mainland as this tsunami is rolling in on just unblemished infrastructure. That's the starting point.
And that's with the earthquake. Now, this is if it's a 9-point scale earthquake, it was 70 kilometers off Japan. Now, you'd think there would be infrastructure that would would have affected infrastructure for sure. They say that if a 9-point earthquake ever happened, 1,000 kilometers around that sort of perimeter, you'd pretty well much flatten the crap out of it because they had one in Japan. What was it?
Kobe?
Yeah, Kobe's in 1995, a 6.8, and that had major infrastructure problems.
Yeah, just get on Google Images and look at the damage from that earthquake, and with a 9.0, you're talking more than 100 times the intensity of Kobe, because the Richter scale is not linear. Okay, so yeah, a 9.0 is more than 100 times the magnitude of the Kobe earthquake, and yet not even wooden houses were collapsed.
That's curious. So, what was the distance of the epicenter from the tsunami hit point in that little town? To 70 k's or more?
Well, he said there was no 9.0 quake. That's what Stone says. But the purported epicenter was 70 kilometers. But he did report that there were 3 simultaneous quakes on the mainland. Okay, simultaneous quakes, 3 of them of lesser magnitude, like around 6-point-something magnitude, and he speculates that those were caused by HARP. But really, here's the deal with the earthquake, the earthquake and the seabed nuke. It's still speculation, not smoking gun. The real smoking gun work that he did had to do with the reactors and the explosions of the reactors themselves.
All right. Well, listen. Can we hold on for this, and we'll go into a song there, James. James Farganne. We could go into a song, and then we'll talk about this and Israel's involvement as well.
Yes.
That's Florence and the Machine, Breaking Down. It's from her last album.
Yeah, it's one of Shad's favourite bandos. Got James Farganne on here, all the way from Korea. If you've just come on, we're just talking about Fukushima and, and Jim Stone and what James has written out there for the people out there on Henry Macko's as a contributor. And it's interesting to say, we're just saying about, well, there was an earthquake at 9 points. Well, that's what we heard, 9 points. 9 point for the Richter scale. And we're just saying, how could there was no infrastructural damage around the sort of coastline of Japan. It was just a tsunami, and that was it.
But more curiously is the issue to do with Magnus BSP and the security and what they did to the site. So can you tell us about Magnus BSP?
All right. Well, Japan expressed support for an independent Palestinian state, and Japan offered to enrich uranium for Iran. And right around, I think, a year before the Fukushima event, strangely enough, an Israeli firm associated with Dimona, which is sort of like Israel's version of the Pentagon, got a contract for running security at Fukushima Daiichi. Okay, so that's peculiar.
That's a plan.
But it's a fact. Yeah. It happened. And they installed some very large, oversized stereoscopic cameras in the reactor cores. And they established, in violation of international nuclear safety code, they installed internet data links in the reactor cores. And following first of all, in the week before the disaster, they went back to Israel, all 12 of them. Went back to Israel. And in the wake of the disaster, they monitored the reactor cores remotely via the internet, publicly, in violation of international nuclear safety code. Nobody took them to task for it. They publicly monitored the state of the reactor cores, their main mouthpiece, okay? So now here's the thing. Here's the thing that Jim Stone connected, is that these oversized cameras that they installed are exactly the same shape as what he calls gun-type nuclear bombs, okay? Basically micronukes. So, this is not yet smoking gun. This is still just like common sense. Look at it with your eyeballs and see how it matches up. Smoking gun stuff comes in when we look at Stuxnet, which is it's a virus that is basically Dimona, which is again like the Israel's version of the Pentagon, developed this virus to attack Siemens control systems.
Now, can you explain? Yeah, Stuxnet. It's a system where it goes in, it infiltrates into a computer system where you think everything's going swell, but it's in there, and you think the operating systems are working for the nuclear plant, but really there's a virus in there, a worm.
Well, yeah. Again, nuclear reactors are not supposed to have internet data links because of this virus threat, okay? Stuxnet was developed by the Israelis. They have been documented to have used it to attack Iran's nuclear program, okay? This is the established fact in the mainstream media. And Stuxnet, it basically spreads by USB, okay? And basically they flood a country with it. You could very well have Stuxnet on your computer and you have no idea. You stick a USB drive into your computer, and if you happen to be a nuclear plant engineer or personnel, and you take your USB into the plant, you just plug it into your computer to, for whatever reason, and then bang, it's on.
The worm's there, goes into the system.
It goes in, and what it does is it interferes with the Siemens SCADA control software system that basically controls the cooling pipes and valves for the reactor. So it completely disrupts the hydraulics, but it sends normal readings back to the engineers, so they think everything is fine. They don't know what's going on, but meanwhile the virus is completely disrupting the hydraulics, and in case of a nuclear power plant, that's disaster, right? So the big smoking gun of Fukushima, which is like, if you're familiar with 9/11 and how, Building 7 is a smoking gun, Reactor 4 is the smoking gun of Fukushima, because Reactor 4 exploded. And these GE nuclear power plants were extremely well built. The containment walls were 4 to 8 feet thick of rebar reinforced concrete that was pulverized into powder. Reactor 4 was offline. It wasn't even operational that day.
It wasn't on.
It was the dome was removed. It was offline for refueling, and Jim Stone provided aerial drone photography to prove that the dome was off of the reactor. It wasn't even operational. Therefore, the Arnie Gunderson disinformation mill says that it was hydrogen that exploded those reactors. 3 reactors exploded.